There's a fascinating debate among the next generation of Americans about what kind of economic system they want to live under. So our current system of capitalism has lifted roughly 1 billion people out of poverty over the last 25 years. It has arguably done more to empower people and raise the living standards of people around the world more than any other force or political movement in human history. But despite that, a new survey from Axios found that more 18 to 24-year-olds view socialism favorably than capitalism, the only age group to do so. Well, ahead of 2020, we thought it was a good idea to have a debate between two millennials on the opposite sides of that issue. Charlie Kirk, founder of Turning Point USA, and socialist activist Elijah Joyner. Here is just some of that discussion. All right, Charlie, let's start with you. I mean, it's exciting to think of price controls on things like transportation for people who haven't worked yet, maybe don't have a job. If all transportation, no matter where you go in a city, costs the same, well, who wouldn't be for that, right? I mean, I lived in the Soviet Union as a student in college, and I remember the metro was 5 kopecks, I think. That seemed great, but you didn't have any other rights. So why is this becoming more popular, perhaps, here?
Well, it's very easy to be generous with other people's money. And look, when you're young, and most of the followers of this movement, I guess you could call it that, are students, and they want to believe in utopia. It's the people that are actually pushing this forward, that have actually lived through the Soviet Union, that have been to Cuba, that have seen the failures of these ideas across the world, that they should know better. But it's the next generation. They've never been taught the failures of the ideology and the philosophy behind these ideas, that it's inevitable it's going to fail, because it goes directly against human nature, Laura, because human beings are going to be naturally self-interested. And the only system that allows that self-interest to be good for all people is one that respects private property rights and makes sure that you do something productive with that drive. Communism and socialism will inevitably fail because individuals will try to get as much wealth and as much power as they can, and the only way you could do that is run for office and then exploit the citizens.
Now, Elijah, your message is what? And what drew you to socialism?
Right. Well, my message is simple. Capitalism is not working for young people. And we know this when you look at the amount of student debt, $1.5 trillion in student debt drowning my generation. We understand that this debt needs to be canceled. It's hurting us. It's drowning us. We can't afford a house. We can't afford a $1,000 emergency. We can't afford our health care. And these studies have been done by for example, the Koch-funded Mercatus Center did a study showing that Medicare for All would save the country $2 trillion in health care expenditures per year. So we know the problem.
Elijah, youth unemployment hit a 52-year low last year. There are more jobs for more people at this time in our nation's history than I think since the Industrial Revolution. I mean, that's how well the economy is doing. I mean, we are the envy of the world. Europe's not working. Germany's economy is basically at a 0.1, 0.2% GDP. China's slowing down. Everyone's looking to the United States because we're actually humming. We're actually creating jobs as other countries are beginning to shed them. So I'm curious, Charlie. Elijah seems like a nice guy, and he's trying to, I guess, put himself through college. But how did we get to the point where people think it's someone else's responsibility to make sure that you get everything that everyone else has? How did we get to that point? Because that's not how I was raised, and I don't get how people think.
No,
you have that right to have whatever someone else has. You have to have that exact same thing or better.
Laura, it's a terrific question. I think I can answer it rather quickly. When you were growing up 30 or 40 years ago, your parents and the older generation would say, America is wonderful, and you need to go through a development process, and you need to make better choices. Now, we're telling young people, my generation, you are wonderful, and America's a horrible place, and America needs to go through different changes. Now, of course, what the problem with that is that my generation believes we're entitled to everything. And to go to this false argument that Elijah made about student loan debt, 99% of all student loans are given out by the federal government. Remember when Maxine Waters did this whole hearing, Laura, where she was trying to call out all the big banks on all the exploitation they're doing on student loans? And she was surprised even to learn that the big banks aren't even engaged in student loans anymore. And so the thing that you're trying to use as your big example is this massive student loan industry It's the government that is perpetrating it. Your ideology and your philosophy, with all due respect, would only grow government, raise taxes, and lower freedom. And look, I'll say this, Laura. So many students want to accomplish utopia. Instead of talking about things that'll never happen, let's admit that life is a very, very difficult journey. Let's expand freedom, and the individual has to be responsible for going through that, not somebody else for yourself.